you get such an euphoric feeling if you do sitting meditation properly. A type of high that is extremely hard to explain, right? And so you stop really paying attention to the physical practices, and then it ends up hurting them really badly. And if it hurts them bad enough, it will actually disrupt and hurt their spiritual practice. I trained 35 years in Kung Fu and I overtrained. It broke my mind and body. Nothing helped me but Qigong. And now I want to share these methods with you. Adam, a question. Aren't some physical illness perhaps related to psychological or emotional states or beliefs, and perhaps vice versa? So would it be best to do a combo of standing and sitting or laying down, even if you think your problem is just emotional or physical? Thank you, Adam. Always find your talk so informative and thought-provoking. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's a very smart protocol. In fact, that's one of the main problems in the spiritual history is where people kind of, in original Taoism, mind and body was looked upon as fully connected and we should work on both. So we have standing practice, moving practice, sitting practice, and a laying down practice. These four was in original Taoism. And back then, even when I was learning, you weren't allowed to just pick one. It wasn't a buffet. You had to learn it all to provide safety for the student that you're connecting with mind and body. And sometimes we have things that are a little bit more emotional, like anxiety, depression, overthinking, OCD, PTSD, right? That, of course, affects our body. And then we have things that are purely physical, like maybe we broke our leg or we fell and hurt our hip or something, right? So, but mind and body is connected. Like even when you're standing, supposedly that's mainly for your physical body. But like my teacher told me, when you're standing, you get 70% energetic physical charging ability. So it's good for your physical body. But you still get 30% emotional benefits like stillness of mind, calmness, inner peace, right? Whereas when you're sitting, you're doing a lot of emotional work because it's designed for that. You're detoxing your emotions. Depending on the level you're at, you could be moving the blood and the qi downward, where you're calming the mind, stopping overthinking. Later on, you'll notice that you'll enter boredom, and that will change into loneliness, which is what most people cannot deal with. And that's usually when most people quit practicing meditation, when they hit that level. Because modern times, a lot of time, meditation is just looked upon as a way to relax and calm the mind, or mindfulness. But that's really just the beginning. Later on, if you keep going, it will turn into loneliness. And then facing your childhood trauma, repressed memory, that's when it taps into a lot of the anxiety symptoms we see, as well as depression. You go through a detox and dissolving and blocking stage, right? And if you go past that level, that's when it turns spiritual and you go into trance or altered state of consciousness. That's when, that's when all the spiritual talk starts to happen, like death anxiety, feeling the living spirit and stuff like that. But they're all connected, because even when you're doing the sitting practice, like my teacher said, you're 70% emotional and spiritual, but you still get some physical benefit. So there's a 70-30 rule when you're standing or when you're sitting. Standing is 70% physical, 30% emotional and spiritual, and sitting is 70% emotional or spiritual, but 30% physical qi. So it is connected, and you're 100% right. And I also agree with you that unless somebody really is pressed for time, I don't really think it's a good thing for a teacher or a student to just concentrate on spirituality or sitting practices and ignore standing and moving practice. Vice versa. I think it is popular, but not a good thing in Taoism for people to just focus on the physical side, like Tai Chi or moving Qigong, and ignoring the spiritual side or the sitting part, right? Because like if you do a quick search on Google or YouTube for Qigong right now, 99.9% of the clips out there, all the free lessons, is really moving Qigong. That's really for your physical health. It's got nothing. You might get some calmness in mind out of it, but nowhere near the dissolving process that you get in sitting meditation. And in history, we know people pay a price. Like some people only concentrate on the sitting. Like they look at some of the Christian mystics, like the great Teresa of Avila or St. John of the Cross. Both both of them are some of my meditation heroes because they're able to do the merging process to the highest point. If you read between the lines and the metaphors, and you look at some of the work that they wrote about, especially Teresa Evla, with the Castle book that she wrote, she talked about the stages of meditation. It's pretty much parallel to Hinduism and Taoism, at least original Taoism of the merging process. But she was sick in most of her adult life. Like, she was really, really sick. That's an example of someone that just did praying or sitting work, but ignored the standing or the physical work. Not to say that maybe in her time there wasn't even those practices in her lineage. But the point is, if you only focus on praying or sitting practices or spiritual practices and ignore your body, she was sick for the majority of her adult life. And same thing with, if I'm not mistaken, St. John of the Cross. She was really sick, right? Same thing as in Zen Buddhism. There's the famous Zen master, arguably one of the best that ever lived, one of my childhood heroes, Hakun. You can Google Zen sickness on Google. You talk about how he had a complete nervous breakdown from just doing Zazen, or Zen Buddhist meditation, where you're working on the merging process. And eventually all his stuff got stuck upward, and he had to go to a Taoist to learn grounding practices to save himself, because he was pretty much killing himself with too much meditation. That's another example of only concentrating on spiritual work or sitting meditation and ignoring your physical body, or the standing practices or the moving practices. So that could become a major problem, right? When people start getting one-sided. I really believe in balance. Like, you look at the classic Taoist symbol of the yin and yang, right? The white has a dot of black and the black has a dot of white. It signifies balance. And I know it's cliche and common sense, but a lot of people that only concentrate on spiritual practice kind of forget about that common sense. And the major reason is because you get such an euphoric feeling if you do sitting meditation properly. A type of high that is extremely hard to explain, right? And so you stop really paying attention to the physical practices, and then it ends up hurting them really badly. And if it hurts them bad enough, it will actually disrupt and hurt their spiritual practice. In the case of Master Hakun in Zen Buddhism, because it's really hard to continue to pray and meditate when you're in complete agony and your brain and your body is just eating itself, right? So pay attention to that. But history also has shown the other side. People that only pay attention to the physical aspect of Taoism and don't do any sitting or spiritual work. All they do is the standing, and all they do is the moving work. That's also not very smart. You look at, who's a good example? Like, a lot of the internal martial artists in China, all they do is standing and the moving practice, and they become as powerful as an elephant, but they're still suffering a lot of human emotions that we all suffer, like anxiety, depression, a big ego, bad temper, picking fights, being extremely violent, uncontrolled anger. The martial art history has a lot of example of that. Even people that do a lot of qigong, because they do the standing stuff to charge their body, but they haven't done any spiritual work. So all their demons are still there, all the suffering of human emotions are still there, but it doesn't need to be if they were just balanced and they were actually doing a lot of the sitting practice, right? Or you see that, like, even members in my family, they love doing Tai Chi, the moving practice. Rather, it's my aunt, my grandmother, my mom, and it makes them feel better physically, but it doesn't really deal with their emotional issues at all, because it wasn't designed for that. You might get some relaxation out of it, some calmness of mind out of it. You might de-stress a little bit, but it's not getting into the deep issues, right? So this is really important to pay attention to, because if you get one-sided, it actually is not just a matter of, oh, common sense, I'll just do the other stuff to balance out. It doesn't work like that. It develops a blind spot as you get better at it, because there's an addiction to it. There's an addiction to physical power, as a lot of martial artists have shown, right? Domination. There's also a lot of addiction in getting bliss and inner peace and high. A type of serotonin and endorphin high that, man, it's like taking a drug. You can get as high as a kite, right? So you get really addicted from both sides. It's not a physical addiction, but it's a psychological addiction. And people fall victim to that. And because now we live in an internet age where a lot of people they don't have a teacher, they're just kind of winging it, it can get kind of dangerous, especially if you start developing some power, rather it's a sitting or the standing practice. So keeping in mind balance is really important. And well, it certainly has been true in my case because I started Qigong full time because I was really sick physically. And I did a lot of standing and it completely helped me. But had I not done the sitting practices, I wouldn't have been fixed, right? I needed both. So the standing and the sitting should not be ignored. And most importantly, the moving should be interjected in between. Too much stillness can hurt you too. You need to do some movement. So when you're going through this stuff, right? If I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just a matter of kind of reminding yourself. Write it down if you have to. Like out of the 4 pillars, laying down, sitting, standing, and moving, don't skip any and always rotate. And sometimes people say, hey, Adam, it's really hard because I have a full-time job, I got family obligation, I can only practice 30 minutes a day. That's okay too, because the ancient Taoists also thought of that, because a lot of them, not all of them were monks and mountain hermits. A lot of them actually live in a village and they had regular life, like family obligation and work. Under that condition, they might only have half an hour to an hour or two to practice a day. So they developed like the 90-day or the 100-day cycle, right? So for 100 days or 90 days, depending on the lineage, they only practice sitting with a little bit of moving as a warm-up. And then after that, they chop it off. And then to the next 90 or 100 days, they only practice standing. So that's another way you can work it in your day, right? Or some people, if they're healthy and they're just going for maintenance, instead of doing a 90-day cycle, they might do just a rotation. So, like I do standing, next day I do sitting, next day I do standing, next day I do sitting. By doing that, and if you don't have enough time to practice, you can still maintain some sort of balance, right? This is really important because depending on where you're from, but I live in Vancouver, right? When I look around, the physical pain I see a lot among seniors, because a lot of them here don't exercise, but the mental pain that I see is in all age groups. Doesn't matter if they're young or old, maybe because things are so expensive nowadays or whatever reason. Maybe in another podcast I can talk about the psychological reason behind this because I did a lot of reading on this, but people are not very happy these days. So I really wish they knew that they can just sit, practice, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, or Taoism, and there are a systematic way you can feel a lot better, right? But most people don't know these practices actually exist. Anyways, we're out of time. I hope I answered your question. If not, leave a comment below. I would love to talk about this some more because it's one of the more important questions I've ever gotten. This idea of balance instead of being one-sided. For those that are interested in training with us, we train once a week together in a live stream class. All classes are recorded in the student library, so if you miss a class, it's not a big deal. All the classes are there. We also have a private student forum to ensure that every single student can customize individualized instruction. If you're interested, follow the links below. Hope to see you there.